Hi, if you're new to my channel, I am Jamie Glowacki and I am the author of Oh Crap Potty Training and Oh Crap I Have a Toddler, and I help parents potty train and parent using curiosity and connection rather than coercion and compliance. Today, I want to talk about a hot potty training topic called regressions. So a lot of people are using the term regression incorrectly when they come to me for help. So I thought I'd lay out an outline of what a regression is, what are the most common scenarios in which your child might regress, and how to handle them. So first and foremost, a regression is a full backwards move. The Webster's definition is a return to a former or less developed state. So this is a full-blown backwards move for your child. The cases in which we really highlight regressions and they become a big deal are whenever your child has an extremely big life change. And a few of those are moving, particularly out of state, a divorce or a separation, a financial crash if you suddenly both parents lose their job, or there's some sort of financial straits that puts a lot of strain on the family and may change your situation. And of course, having a second child. So I typically see regressions in that last scenario when you go from your first child is potty trained to your second child. I don't typically see it for siblings after that. It mostly happens in that first one kid to two kid transition. What are not regressions are a child who's doing pretty well at home and then things kind of fall apart at daycare or preschool. Then also, if they're at any other place, like a caregiver, so say they're doing well at home and they stay with your mom twice a week and they're wetting their pants there. Those are accidents, and we'll talk about those in a minute, but that's not a regression. Also, if your child is just not properly potty trained. So a lot of people come to me after it's kind of been a little bit of a mess, and it turns out that the kid really wasn't ever potty trained, and the parents are saying they regressed, but they didn't. They just never really had it in the first place. And then the last scenario that is not a regression, but can really be tricky because it can seem like it, is what I call cluster accidents. And this is when your child can go maybe a week, 2 weeks, everything's fine. And then you have a couple of days of these like random accidents that even seem to take the child by surprise. And we'll talk about those because a lot of parents think that's a regression, and it's not. It's something else that we need to take care of. So going back to the big stressors, when we're talking about a big move, a divorce, some sort of financial change, you really want to talk to your child about the pink elephant that's in the middle of the room. So I find that parents really think that they can get away with a child not knowing what's happening in the house because they're too young. It's not appropriate. I saw this at the beginning of the pandemic. Parents would tell me, oh, they don't know anything's going on. I haven't talked about the pandemic. You know, they didn't want to scare the child with like talk of sickness or spreading or people getting sick. And they therefore made the mistake that the child didn't think anything was going on. And I was like, look, y'all are home. They're not able to go to their favorite things. They're sitting watching TV a lot more. You're letting them have, food that they might not regularly have. If you remember March of 2020, it was crazy. So I was like, your kid knows something's going on. There's a global pandemic creating anxiety in a lot of people. And so, yeah, they know something's going on, even if they don't know the full extent of it. So when we're talking about divorce, when we're talking about a big move or a financial thing, it's okay to put that in childlike terms, but it's more important that you state that there is something happening. So your child doesn't think they're kind of out in left field, right? So you can easily just say something like, I know mommy and daddy haven't been getting along. I know it feels really hard right now. Or I know, I know this move is really big. I'm excited, but I'm a little nervous. You can kind of tell the story through your lens, so you can give them some words for that. And then you always just want to go back to block one. If you're unfamiliar with my book is designed in blocks of learning, Oh Crap Potty Training. And I was just looking around to see if I had a copy. I designed them in blocks of learning so that you can always go back to the last block. So it's literally like building a tower. And so if you find you're unsuccessful at a certain point, you can always just go back to the last stable block, just as if you were building a tower. So you always want to go back to block 1 and sort of run through things. And that's usually the case for that. But just acknowledging that it's going on goes a long way in helping the child. The next one, of course, is a new baby. And again, that transition from 1 kid to 2 seems to be the crutch. There's the moment most accidents happen, most regressions happen right away. And it doesn't have to be a potty training regression. So if you're pregnant and you're nervous that you're going to potty train your first and they'll just regress with the child, that doesn't always happen. In fact, it doesn't happen to a large amount of my clients. A lot of times the kid will have a big feeling, big behavior will act up. I've seen little ones ignore the baby, pretend the baby's not there or invisible. There's all kinds of things that can crop up, but it doesn't have to be a potty training regression. But if there is, again, you want to go back to block 1. You want to make sure big kid has mama love or baby love. So a client really invented this like 15 years ago, that her son needed baby love. He just needed to be held like a baby, because from the toddler's eyes, this little guy is like, this baby gets everything. It's kind of crazy. The baby gets all the love and attention, 7 pounds, doesn't do anything, doesn't have any skills. And then you've got your 2 or 3-year-old who's been working hard at all their skills. And this one gets all the attention at the drop of a hat. It doesn't take long for the older child to be like, well, shoot, maybe I should be in diapers and cry all the time, right? And so we want to make sure that they're getting some baby love, right? Which is like that, oh, you're such a baby, oh, you're so cute, that baby talk that we do. And then it lasts like 15 seconds and then they're off and running, right? Likewise, you want to highlight the big kids, things they can do. So like, wow, the baby sure can't help me like this, you know? One thing you do want to stay away from is you're a big boy, you're a big brother, you're a big. This kid's heard that for the 9 months you've been pregnant with with their second child. So make sure you don't shove that down their throat, because after a while they're like, this sucks being a big kid. I don't want to do this anymore. So they go fully backwards. Another thing that happens with the baby and regressions is feeding times tend to be really hard. So whether you're breastfeeding or bottle feeding, there's a real intimacy to feeding. There's a looking in the eye, there's caressing. It's a very intimate connection, and your older one will feel that. So make sure you set the potty chair up next to you, have the child able, with no pants, able to get to the potty effortlessly, and then make sure they get enough special time, that baby love or mama love, whatever you want to call it, and or some real special time alone. What is key when you get that special time alone with that first child is make sure you mark it as special time. Yes, because sometimes what happens is parents give them special time, but don't mark it as special time. So then the little one is like, I never get any special time. So we really have to tell them that that's happening. Now, let's talk about the no regressions, because that's also, I kind of want to see, oh, this video is really long. Yeah, I'll do this kind of fast. Let's talk about the things that aren't regressions. So accidents that are at daycare or another caregiver or somewhere else. Those are just accidents, and it just means the child needs more skill there. If you're having a hard time at daycare, we have a course in the description that's called the Daycare Blueprint, and I would get that because there's a myriad of things that could be going wrong at daycare. So you want to pinpoint what's happening at daycare. And I talk a lot about this on my podcast and ways to strategize that and what happens if it's still a disaster. So I would definitely check out my whole podcast on that issue. But let's talk really quickly about cluster accidents. So that's, again, when your child's doing really well, and then what happens is they have like a couple of days where it's just endless accidents, and most importantly, they seem to take the child by surprise. Like they're like, I don't even know what happened. So typically what that is indicative of is a poop blockage. So this is crazy because a lot of people don't understand this, but we are not smooth inside. So once there's like a little piece of dried poop can get stuck in like a little nook and cranny, and then every poop that comes by can spackle like a little more poop on that, and it gets distended this way. Yes, it doesn't get distended. We're not steel pipe, so it doesn't necessarily clump up and block poop from coming out. So a child could be pooping very regularly and still have a poop blockage. And then what happens is that distension starts banging against the bladder. But because we move inside, everything's not just all set in stone. Everything moves slightly. The bladder can shift. I mean, that the distension can shift away from the bladder. So that's where you get a couple of days of really good, you know, a couple of weeks of good, I don't want to say behavior, but good pottying, yeah? And then something will move and that will start banging against the bladder, causing the bladder to release like in spurts and in squirts. So I would, if that's happening to you, you want to do a Miralax clean out, and it's a very simple process. Every pediatrician recommends it for various things. So I would call your pediatrician, or you can hook up with one of our consultants and we can walk you through what a Miralax clean out looks like to get that blockage loose. But those are cluster accidents. Again, those are marked by a couple of weeks of being good, and not being good like, I mean, they're a good kid. I mean, pottying well, right? And then you get several days of like crazy accidents. All right, so that's it on regressions. As always, thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate it. I do have free and paid resources in the description. I have lots of courses, lots of resources, my podcast, my blog post, all of that. And of course, as always, if you enjoyed this, please share, like, and subscribe. All right, rock on.